When you think of hard FNAF games, a few may come to mind. Perhaps you think of Ultimate Custom Night, for its sheer number of characters. You might even think of the FNAF Custom Mode list, housing the toughest challenges for any aspiring FNAF master. But if you thought of either, you would be wrong! The game I'm talking about is not only the hardest FNAF game ever, but is probably the hardest anything in the entire universe. I am of course talking about 5 periods at Hapara's. If you've been wondering why it's been so long since my last video, this is the reason why. For nearly 2 years I have been a slave to this game, held captive by its inescapable grasp, tortured, beaten, and bruised by its merciless hand. But I have emerged a victor, and to you, the audience, I will tell my tale. This is how to beat 5 periods at Hapara's with 100% completion. In order to 100% football, you will need to complete 15 distinct achievements. I will be going over each achievement as I get to them in the game itself. When you first load into the game, the only option you have is to start a new game, so that's what we'll do first. Upon starting a new game, you are greeted with a screen showing the roster of Period 1, as well as the number of tasks you must complete to pass the period. You can complete tasks by clicking on the computer in the middle of the room, then clicking on whatever task you want to do. You will begin working on the task, and a timer will appear indicating how much longer you have left on the task. You can only progress on tasks while you have this computer screen open, so it is important to maximize your time in these tasks. Additionally, the tasks take varying times to complete. Elite Shapes takes 32 seconds, Bouncy Hoop takes 25, Swordian takes 30, W takes 38, and Starve Alone takes 27. Generally, you will want to complete the task in order of longest to shortest, since it is better to complete your longer tasks all at once early before things get hectic later on. So the order that you should always go for is W, Elite Shapes, Swordian, Starve Alone, Bouncy Hoop. Since Hapara is a complete ripoff of FNAF, it too has a camera system. By moving your mouse to the bottom of the screen, you can look through various cameras in the school. Most of these cameras are pretty uninteresting, just allowing you to see the movements of characters throughout the building. However, there are 2 cameras that are very important, but we will get to those later. The only enemies present in Period 1 are Hapara and El Gato, which are both very manageable early on. I'll go over every enemy in depth once we get to the custom mode. For now, here's what you need to know. Hapara will come to your left door every so often. When it is at your door, it will block you from completing tasks until it leaves. You can make it leave by shutting your door on it, and for some time it will go away. You can tell if it has left your door by checking if it is still there with the lights. However, if you leave it at your door for too long without blocking it, it will do one of 2 things. If you are currently working on a task, it will stop that task and remove all progress on it. If you are not working on a task, it will reset one of your completed tasks, so you will have to do it again. If you have your tasks open while it is blocking them, it will raise suspicion pretty quickly. What is suspicion, you may ask? Well, maybe you should be more patient because I was just about to get to that, moron. El Gato, the second character in Period 1, is basically this game's power mechanic. Instead of power draining when you use doors, lights, and cameras, suspicion will rise. You can see how much suspicion you have in the top left corner of the screen with this handy little gauge. Once suspicion hits 100, El Gato will come to your office and eventually kill you. El Gato ignores doors, so there is no way to stop him once you have 100 suspicion. This is why, generally, it is a good idea to be as conservative as you can with your door and camera usage. However, since we are just on Period 1 now, it doesn't really matter. All of the characters in this game operate on level difficulties, much like your standard FNAF game. Since Period 1's levels are so low, you can basically just keep the left door closed the whole time and be fine. In fact, Period 1 is pretty boring, since it only requires 2 tasks. Moving on to Period 2, this period actually has something quite unique. Unlike any other period in the entire game, completing tasks during Period 2 will actually raise suspicion. This is done because of the character introduced this period, Emoji. Emoji will start asleep in the playground and will remain asleep until suspicion hits 25. Once suspicion hits 25, he will wake up and be awake for the rest of the period. When he is awake, he will make his way towards your office and attack from the right door. You can tell he is about to attack by looking at this camera. If he is there, you will need to close your right door to ensure he doesn't come in and kill you. You can tell when he leaves when you hear this sound. After this sound, he goes back to one of his previous spots. Emoji is one of the hardest characters in the game, but I'll touch more on that later. For now though, he isn't much of a problem as this is just Period 2, and it's still pretty easy. Period 3 introduces 2 more characters to the roster. Michael and Dinosaur. Michael will work out in the library, and you will have to periodically zap him with energy to keep him from attacking you. Much like El Gato, he will ignore doors, so once he runs out of energy, you are basically doomed. You can tell if he's run out of energy when you hear this sound. In earlier periods, Michael will also make a huffing sound when he is about to run out of energy. This is very useful for knowing when you have to zap him, but in later periods this sound will go away, so it is important to not rely on it too much. Michael's recharge per zap will decrease as his levels get higher, meaning you will have to check on him more and more as the periods go on. The other character introduced in this period is Dinosaur. Dinosaur will occasionally spawn on either side of your office, walking towards your computer. Once it reaches your computer, it will disable your cameras for a little bit and also give you some suspicion. Dinosaur spawns fairly often, so it is important to stay vigilant and not let it reach your computer. While it may not be much of a problem now, it will be a much bigger nuisance later. Moving on to period 4, this is when the periods start to get interesting. From this point on, we will have every character active, and we'll need to complete all 5 tasks. The final character we will have to deal with is Isaac. Isaac will occasionally spawn in either your left or right door, and you will know when he has spawned when you hear this sound. When you hear this sound in either your left or right ear, close the appropriate door to block Isaac. You can tell Isaac has left by checking the lights. Now that we have gone over every character, it's time for period 5. With no new characters to introduce, this period is a test of everything we've learned so far. To be honest, I find it to be one of the harder challenges in this game, as I still struggle with it sometimes. Just try to be as conservative with your door and camera usage as possible, and try to stay on task for as much as you can. Once you have completed period 5, congratulations, you have officially beaten the game. Or have you? After period 5, you will have to complete an extra period. Period 6 takes place overnight at the school, and is actually shorter than most periods, lasting from 12 to 7 instead of 12 to 12. Additionally, you will not have to complete any tasks, instead simply fighting off enemies normally. However, Hapara is now lethal, and will kill you if you don't close your doors in time. However, due to the short length and lack of tasks, period 6 is honestly pretty easy, much easier than period 5 in my opinion. Once you have completed period 6, you earn the certificate of completion, signaling your domination over Fapa. Now that we are done with the main game, let's return to the 100%. In the main menu, you can check your achievements and how many you've done. Just by completing the base game, you can earn 2 achievements, class dismiss and extra credit. You can also complete one of like 5 total probably and skill issue by dying a few times, which is pretty easy. You can earn the 98% bug achievement by dying in the last 50 seconds of a period, which will probably just happen naturally if you get unlucky. You can earn Look You Broke It by completing a period with 100 suspicion at the end, which will also probably happen naturally during your gameplay, as El Gato can take some time to get to you before the period ends. Perfectionist achievement is obtained by beating periods 1 through 5 with all tasks completed, but honestly that's really easy, so you can do that in your first playthrough. The next achievement dealing with the base game is a little harder though. A+ requires you to complete periods 1 through 6 without dying once, starting from a new game. This includes resetting, meaning you have to complete all periods in one go first try. This achievement is probably the worst in the game in my opinion, as it can waste a lot of time. Periods 1 through 3 are horrendously boring, and things only really get interesting in periods 4 through 6, but these periods are also a bit difficult, especially period 5. I died multiple times during period 5 after spending about 20 minutes on the previous periods, and this really just drove me up the wall.
No! No! Oh my god. Come on, please. Come on. Oh, so close. Come on. Oh, damn it! Oh, so close. Oh, every single time it's all the battle. I hate that.
However, since all previous periods have been beaten already, it is possible, just annoying.
Come on. Yes. Oh. Yes. Finally, God, double that shit. The team is fucked. Oh my god.
Once you complete A+, now we can start having some fun. Upon completing period 6, a new button appears on the home screen. Clicking this button will take you to an extra period with a broken clock, no cameras, and a new computer. Clicking on this computer will reveal a game you have to complete with your keyboard. The game involves moving a square to the end of a goal while avoiding touching the red. This game starts off easy but can get pretty annoying later, especially when the other threats start coming in. Present in this period are 3 unique enemies: CK Express, Jupiter Grades, and the Ads. CK Express will signal its approach with this sound. When you hear this sound, this means that it is at your door. It can only attack your left door, and you will make this sound when it is about to strike. When you hear this sound, quickly close your door to make it leave. You can tell it is left by checking the lights. Since Elgato is not present in this period, there is no suspicion, meaning there is no punishment for leaving doors and lights on. However, if CK Express arrives at your door and finds it closed, it will kill you, so make sure you don't leave it closed forever. You can, however, leave your light on. The next enemy in this period is Jupiter Grades. Jupiter Grades will randomly spawn in your office, making this sound when it does. When it spawns, you will have to quickly find it and click on it in order to make it disappear. If you don't click on it fast enough, it will kill you. The last enemy is hardly an enemy, it's just a bunch of advertisements that spawn on your computer. When these advertisements spawn, you will have to click the X on them in order to remove them. They can stop your square dead in its tracks, meaning if you aren't quick, they can kill you. Overall, this period can be pretty tough, since it's completely unlike everything else in the game, but it's not so hard and I beat it in about 30 minutes.
Come on, go, I don't care, go. Finally, dude.
Completing the secret period will reward you with this upside down certificate and the Haunt achievement, adding another achievement to your collection. Our next group of achievements are the ones related to Endless Mode, and there are actually quite a few. There are 3 achievements relating to time, requiring you to survive 2, 5, and 10 minutes in Endless Mode. Additionally, Taskmaster requires you to complete 25, actually 15, but even this is kind of bug, tasks in Endless Mode. 15 tasks, you may be asking. I thought there were only 5. Well, you little idiot, tasks in Endless Mode actually reset once you complete all 5, and completing a task will lower your suspicion. However, this is not the mode's only twist. Randomly, all enemy levels will shuffle, resulting in a completely new difficulty. However, the mode itself isn't actually that hard, and all of its achievements can be earned pretty easily. Here are a few tips that I recommend when doing your endless runs. Try to do as many tasks as possible early on, so that you can keep suspicion down and not have to deal with emoji. Once suspicion hits 25, emoji is up for good, and won't go back to sleep even if you lower suspicion again. Generally, it is a good idea to wait until Michael is about to run out of energy to zap him again. If you zap him after a shuffle, there is a chance that this will actually remove time, since it can set his energy to a lower cap. Suspicion isn't much of an issue during this period, but it can be if you roll a high Elgato level, so just be careful when that happens. All enemies act the same, so there isn't much issue there. Doing all of these should ensure an easy, endless victory.
Okay, walk out of it because I said it right. I'm fine. Alright, let's do it.
Once you beat Endless Mode, there is only one challenge left, and fortunately, it is the hardest challenge of them all. Before we get into the proper max mode, there is actually another achievement that you can earn in the custom mode. By setting Hapara, Isaac, and Elgato to 20, setting tax to 5, and passing the period without ever using lights or cameras, you can get the Omnipotent achievement. This achievement is actually pretty easy, and I got it on my first try.
Okay, what I was thinking. Somebody is achievement in this game.
With that out of the way, we only have one achievement left, Full House, awarded for beating the custom mode with 5 tasks completed with all characters at level 20. So let's finally get into this. First things first, disable extra animations in the settings. This will make opening tasks and cameras slightly faster, which is vital to surviving this period. I would also turn on quick respawn since you will likely blow through a lot of attempts and want to restart faster. With that out of the way, I'll start by explaining how to deal with each character at max level, then I'll get more into the night itself. At level 20, Hapara arrives fast and returns fast. It will raise a lot of suspicion when you have its pop-up open, so it is not advisable to use this to check if it's gone. Instead, whenever you need to block it, close your door and turn on your light at the same time. In FPA, lights only raise suspicion when they are on by themselves. When a door is closed and its corresponding light is turned on, only the door raises suspicion, meaning you can always have lights on for free only when your doors are closed. When you are completing tasks, you will easily know when Hapara is there because of the pop-up. However, when tasks are over, you should occasionally check the lights for Hapara, since it makes no sound cues. Emoji is probably the hardest character to deal with in the custom mode. He can completely throw off your entire cycle, and he can attack pretty fast. For this reason, it is best to try to conserve as much suspicion as you possibly can before you reach 25. After you hit 25, things will be much harder for you to deal with, but I'll get back to this soon. Elgato has no real differences, only making suspicion increase faster, so be sure to be as sparing with your door and camera usage as possible. At level 20, Michael's timer only resets to 15 seconds, and he makes no breathing sound. For this reason, I recommend counting out 15 seconds every time you zap him so you know exactly when to zap him again. If you zap him too frequently, you run the risk of wasting too much suspicion from camera usage. Luckily, there is a constant ticking clock in the background, which makes it easier to count out seconds. The dinosaur is one of the biggest annoyances in the custom mode. Getting hit by it once is practically a game over, so if you ever do get hit by it, just reset at that point. At level 20, it shows up near constantly and moves relatively quickly, so make sure you always deal with it before you open up cameras, otherwise you might miss it as your cameras block your view of it. Isaac attacks very fast at level 20, meaning you will have to quickly shut your door when you hear him. However, to conserve suspicion, I recommend waiting 1 or 2 seconds before you shut it. He leaves pretty quickly, so once you shut your door, you can pretty much just open it back up again. Remember that lights don't cause anything when doors are closed, so use your lights to check if he's gone. Now that I've detailed how to deal with every character, I'll get more into the gameplay itself. The custom mode for FNAF can generally be separated into 4 phases. Phase 1 is the first task phase. Phase 2 is the pre-emoji phase. Phase 3 is the post-emoji phase. And Phase 4 is the post-task phase. Phase 1 starts right when the period begins. Upon entering the period, immediately open your computer and start W with the longest task. During the course of this task, you will have to deal with Dinosaur, Hapara, and Isaac. This phase can be pretty tricky, but if you are lucky you can line up Isaac and Hapara at the same time to deal with them at once. Upon completing W, click Elite Shapes as fast as possible to begin Phase 2. The next time you deal with Dinosaur, open up your cameras and zap Michael. Since he always starts the period at around 60 seconds, you would not need to zap him until Phase 2. During Phase 2, you will have to zap Michael around every 15 seconds as well as deal with Hapara, Isaac, and Dinosaur. Ideally, you can complete 2 more tasks before Phase 3. Phase 3 begins when suspicion hits 25 and Emoji awakens. Now you will need to periodically check Emoji's camera to block him when the time comes. Having to deal with Emoji can often ruin your cycles for checking with Michael, as he basically never aligns with Michael's timer. Since you need to minimize your time in the cameras, try to check for him sparingly but often enough to not die. It's hard to explain, but by playing around with it, you will get the hang of it. Once you complete every task, you can move on to Phase 4. It is vital to have less than 100 suspicion by Phase 4, as generally Phase 4 will begin with around 2 minutes left in the period, and you will not survive that long. If you do manage to reach Phase 4 with less than 100 suspicion, then the game will become a lot easier. Make sure to check Hapara's light so it doesn't delete your task, and keep checking Emoji and Michael. Try to keep suspicion from 100 for as long as you can, since Elgato will attack not long after you reach 100. If you manage to complete Phase 4 successfully, then congratulations, you have beaten FNAF 100%. Of course, this is all easier said than done. I mean it when I say that this max mode is the hardest thing in the game. This max mode took me about 20 years and 33 months to beat, and this isn't even counting the time spent crying in the main menu. For some reason unknown to God, your view of the office still moves while you are in cameras, and since Emoji's camera crosses the bounds to move your camera, checking Emoji will always mess with your view and can throw everything off. This is genuinely what makes him the hardest character. I think I speak for every single person on this planet when I say, God oh God, why does your view move when you are in cams? This is the worst feature of all time. Kyle sucks at game development, and I hate him so much. I spent hours of my life slaving away at this horrid mode when I could have been doing so many other things. My biggest hurdle was entering Phase 4 with less than 100 suspicion, as for the longest time I just could not do this. However, during one run, this happened.
Yes!
I don't know how I did it, but somehow I managed to beat it. I had even managed to reach Phase 3 with 3 tasks completed, a first for me. I don't really know how I was able to do this. I had recently developed the Michael counting strategy, and had started to be more risky with my Isaac blocks, so I guess both of these plus some luck contributed to this win. Once you do manage to beat the max mode, you will be rewarded with this trophy, the 100% 5 periods at Hapara's, and your freedom. Now you will finally be able to move on to actually good games.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure to hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, and ring the bell to turn on notifications. I know it's been a while for the last one, but I promise next time will be sooner. The next video will be in about 3 years.